Hi there, this is Nick Klosky, and I welcome you to the June 2016 monthly 3D printing and 3D design webinar. I am one of the co-founders of Honeypoint 3D, and we're super excited to, again, talk to our loyal fans. We have a good number of people on the webcast right now, as well as replays later. We're just super excited to be part of this community and share some of our tips and tricks with you. This month, we got a number of requests from people to learn more about Fusion 360. Certainly, if any of the people online have questions about 3D printing, 3D design, Mesh Mixer, any of the other tools that we teach about, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. In fact, I would rather answer your questions than go over the things that I have prepared. So be sure to write in the little question box on the right-hand side there any of your questions, and I'll be glad to address them. Just some things I wanted to talk about. Our book that I mentioned last month is now out on Amazon. It's entitled Getting Started with 3D Printing, and it's published by Maker Media. So it's part of their Getting Started series. So getting started with Arduino and drones and all of that. Our book is Getting Started with 3D Printing. So hopefully you can look that up. And I actually think I have, yeah, there we go. So I think that there's some sort of link, hopefully on the webcast, that allows you to click on that and look and order our book. I hope that you enjoy it, and we had a lot of fun writing it. So that's there. So it has a little Apple wireframe apple on the cover, and I really hope that you take a look at it and enjoy it or recommend it to others. I'll bring that link up later. It looks like a couple of you have already clicked on it, so thank you very much. And I'll take it off and I'll put it back on probably a little bit later. So I don't have any questions from the attendees. What we usually do is we have some people attend live, and then quite a number of people listen to this afterwards. So if you're one of the people who is listening to this webcast after it's recorded, then be sure to email me with any questions you have. My email address is nick@honeypoint3d.com, and I invite you to ask questions about 3D printing, design, really anything that has to do with additive manufacturing. So with that said, we don't have any questions yet from our attendees, so I'll go into talking about what I was planning on talking about, which is Fusion 360. So you'll see me do this a couple times. I will share my screen here. I'll kind of go off into an infinity, but so Fusion 360 can be downloaded from fusion360.autodesk.com, or you can just go to the Autodesk webpage, and I think it's just /Fusion 360 as well works. And you can download the free trial for Fusion 360 here. 3D CAD reinvented. If you wait for this to go through, there's actually a quote from me there, which is pretty cool. I'm on their homepage because I really appreciate and like this software. So here is the free trial. So I'll stop the screen sharing here. So first off, people ask, why this piece of CAD software compared to all of the other ones out there? Well, there's a couple of questions, or a couple answers to that. First is, if you're on Mac, if you have an Apple Macintosh, there's not too many pieces of design software for you. There's certainly SketchUp and some other ones, but Fusion 360 can be used to create truly professional designs, and it competes against even other paid Autodesk products, as well as SolidWorks and all of that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Fusion 360, as of right now, is free for personal use, but it's also free for commercial use until you make $100,000 or more in your company. And then after that, it's $25 a month per user and per month. really that is just nothing compared to, you know, many thousands for Autodesk Inventor or SolidWorks or Rhino or any of that. So it's really, really cool that you can use it personally, but you can also use it professionally. And okay, I get a question about students for the people listening. So students, it's also free. But here's kind of the catch about students, is that students get all Autodesk software. They get, I think, a lot of SolidWorks software, all free. You can use it while you're a student, no problem, because they want you to learn on it. Now, the issue with this is that the moment that you take your skills and you want to become a product designer yourself, or you want to start a company, using your CAD design skills, those educational licenses are not allowed to be used to start your own company. They're just for learning. So immediately, once you start your company, you would have to pay, you know, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or whatever it is to buy that software to use it commercially. Not so with Fusion, because you're allowed to use Fusion software commercially up to $100,000. So if you have a startup, your startup's not making any money anyway, so you're under that $100,000 limit. So that's pretty cool. Also, if you are a student and you bring a project home, your parents can, or your friends can install the software without violating any usage terms for the license as well. So Fusion has a lot of benefits, and it really does compete with the multi-$1,000 software packages out there. So I'll show you a little bit why. Good, I answered that question, it's good. All right, so let me switch over to Fusion. If nobody asks any question, then this will be probably one of the shorter webinars. We usually go somewhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes, just depending on what questions people have. So let me switch over into Fusion, and I will kind of go over the general ways that you can use it. Now, some exciting things that I talked about in last month's webinar is that I am working on a Fusion class. So you see I'm wearing a MeshMixer t-shirt from our MeshMixer Kickstarter, you know, over 20 hours of training on MeshMixer. Well, I'm working on a Fusion class as well, and it's going to be of similar length. So if you have Fusion on one side, which is parametric CAD modeling, you know, the modeling that would you know, that mice and things like that, or consumer products are used, are designed with, then that's one side. And MeshMixer is the other. MeshMixer being more organic modeling. If you have scanned data, either from like a cell phone with a cell phone camera, or you know, some other sort of scanning technology like an Artex scanner, you can kind of maybe see in the back, I have one of those as well. MeshMixer would be used for working on that sort of data. So with those two, I think, you know, if you take both of those courses and understand them, you'll understand what kind of the whole breadth and width of what 3D printing has to offer, because you can create all sorts of things with that. So let me switch over now and click on this and share my Fusion 360 window here. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for myself. Here we go. All right. So once you start up Fusion 360, it'll actually prompt you for some training. And I think this is it here. Actually, let me go back. Yeah, so there's a whole getting started thing, which is in-product training, which is actually quite nice. So this in-product training actually has you doing things in the product. So as you do things, it'll tell you how to actually navigate around, things like that. So you can go through that training, and if you want to get to it again, you go up here to help. You can kind of see it. It's going off the screen. I can't help that. But it's right here. It says getting started, the second one down. So when you start off with Fusion, you're presented with this kind of blank slate here. The first thing you want to do is look down on the left-hand upper left corner. You'll be in the modeling environment. These are kind of the general areas inside of Fusion. So I clicked on that. You have model, patch, render, animation, simulation, and CAM, computer-aided machining. So modeling is for working with solid bodies. So I'll just, very quickly create something like this, right? So this is a solid body. This is just a cylinder I'm rotating around here. So that's what the modeling environment is it works with solid models. And solid is actually quite a bit of things, and I'll talk about that later. You have a patching environment, which is used for surface modeling. And I'll show you that because I think this is a really important workspace that doesn't get enough love in the community. So I'm going to talk about that. Rendering, so let's go in here and change this cylinder to something like polished bronze. We can go into the rendering environment, and I can kind of position this where I want, maybe zoom in a little bit, and then hit this, and it will actually create a photorealistic rendering of my object. Now, just a little cue, a little cylinder of brass or bronze isn't really that interesting, but you certainly can create really, really nice things, very dynamic, awesome looking photographs that might run a Kickstarter or something with this. So this is the rendering environment. Animation allows you to create product animation. So you could have something flying around this and entering in, all sorts of things, and it's kind of allows you to create very dynamic animations to show off how your product works. Let me show you a very quick example of simulation. Actually, before I get into simulation, I'll talk about that in a second. CAM is another one. So this allows you to create the tool paths. And let me just talk to you here. The CAM workspace allows you to create tool paths for machining to happen. So machining, if you could imagine, I have a little, actually I could use this. So this is a little X-Acto knife set, right? Actually, I could take the box out. So it's like a little box, right? Machining, it's called CNC, computerized numeric control. Essentially, you start off with a block of material, and then a drill comes down that's spinning, and it goes and it carves out on the inside of an object and turns it into a 3D object. Now, CAM or machining is great for objects where you can get in one aspect. You can go in and tilt the different tools. It supports up to 3+2 axis right now, but it's not good, if you want to carve the bottom, right? You would have to turn the block over and then set that up and things like that. But it'll set up the tool paths for machining as well, so it's very, very powerful. So let's get back into showing what the Fusion can do. Here we go. All right, so you're in the modeling environment. Under here, under Create, you can create some basic shapes, so boxes. Reorient myself here. A box, right? So of different shapes and sizes. You can make it very accurate, saying 23 millimeters by 45 millimeters by 32 millimeters. Right? We have a box right here, and then all sorts of different things like creating fillets, right? So we can fillet two sides of this, which makes a little bevel on them. We can create a chamfer right here, which will, instead of a fillet, which is rounded, a chamfer is angled. We can create an angle on that, and do all sorts of different things. Then we can, if we wanted to, we could shell the object like that and make kind of a cool little box that we could put things in. Now, as I'm doing this, this is building up a history down here of everything that I'm doing. So if I go and do maybe an extrude command on the side of this box or something like that, that extrude command is here. And I can double click on this to edit the extrude and say, no, I really want this to be 20 millimeters. Or I can go back here and double click on this fillet and say, oh, I don't want the fillet to be 8 millimeters, I want it to be 13. And everything downstream updates from that. So now that's a 13 millimeter fillet going down. So you can do quite a bit in the model environment, starting with basic shapes And we started with a curve, we started with a cube, and now we have different curves and things like that. But that's kind of confining. So there's other things inside of Fusion to help you create. One of those things is the sketch. So this isn't an actual mode inside of here, but the sketch turns into a solid object later. So I'm going to show you what that is. If we go into Sketch and we say Create Sketch, actually, let me just turn off this body for right now. It asks what plane, there we go, what plane I want to sketch on. The bottom plane here, maybe the front plane, side plane, something like that. So I'm going to maybe just go right here on the bottom plane. So now I can use these sketch tools like lines. I can click on this origin here and draw a line up. And I can be very precise. I could say 35 millimeters at 45 degrees. It creates a 35 millimeter line at 45 degrees. I can move these out if I want to. And then I can, maybe draw an arc, 3-point arc between here and here, like that. And then a line. I can make like a little snow cone, like that. Now, once this shape is fully enclosed on all sides, it turns kind of this shaded color. If I click on Stop Sketch, I go back out, and there is what's called a profile. When I click on this, or actually right-click, I can go to Extrude and pop this up. And now it is a solid body, just like the other one that I had here. And now that it's a solid body, anything, let me turn off the original one, anything that I have as a solid body, I can do. So I could go and put fillets, on the top of this until the fillet doesn't work anymore, but I could go do something like that and create kind of like a little dome or something like that, right? So the sketches turn into solid objects when you extrude them. But the really cool thing is you see down here that the sketch is still here in my timeline at the bottom. I can double click on this and then go in and say, I really didn't want this to be 35 millimeters. I can double click. I can say I wanted this to be 45. And then this moves up. So this turns to be 45. This is still a 45-degree angle for this line, but now this arc has to accommodate because this is constrained with a 45. This is constrained with a 45 degree. So this arc kind of just updates. So that's a really cool thing, is that you can go in and set these dimensions to be whatever you want. Now, if I delete this constraint, I don't need it to be 45. This doesn't need to be 45. I can go down here to Sketch and go to Sketch Dimension and just click on this arc and drag out a dimension. Right now, this has a radius of 18.968983 millimeters. I can say I really need this to be 20 millimeters radius. And now it's a 20 millimeter radius. Also, if we move this entire object, oh, actually, I can't move it because I'm constrained here, but that should have fixed it. And kind of rotate this around like this. Now when I stop Sketch, this has been extruded up based on where that is, and now they intersect, those two objects. So that can be cool, right? So we have a body 2, body 3. We can go up to Modify to Combine and say target body is this, tool body is this, and let's join these together. Now you can see that there is a nice little edge here. So these objects are now combined. Or I can go back and I can double click on this combine and say, oh, instead of joining, I want to cut. And now we've made a really kind of complex cut from one object to another. There we go. So hopefully this kind of shows you that there are a lot of tools to create kind of solid things inside of Fusion in combination with sketching. But there's actually a lot more. And this next feature that I'm going to show you is something that sets Fusion apart from pretty much all of the other tools out there, because Autodesk purchased the intellectual property for T-splines and essentially brought this into their ecosystem. And so you can do things inside of Fusion that would take hours and hours, well, not hours, but a lot of time, 45 minutes to an hour. In other tools, you can do really, really quickly inside of Fusion. So let me show you what this is by going back and sharing the screen again. Great. So I'm going to switch to a different document here. So I am very slowly building a drone. And this drone, I'm just, I'm about 8 months into it. It's just a kind of a very slow process. But this is the controller that I have. So if I wanted to model this, I could certainly do a sketch and extrude these out, but I could do another thing. If I'm in model here, I can click on this, which is create form. And now this create form gives me a certain number of new tools, and I can say, let me create a box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a box on the plane facing me, and I'm going to make it about the size of this controller. I'm going to make it a little bit more complex, like this, and like this. And it's going only on one side. I'm going to say symmetric, but the controller really isn't that big. So I'm going to make it, something around this big. And I do want symmetry. So I want the left-hand side to be like the right-hand side. And that's about it. Actually, and I do want the front and back to be similar as well for purposes of what we're doing right now. So now that I'm kind of based it on this, I can start to go in and let me actually make this canvas a little bit more faint. There we go. So I can go in and I click on this button up here that says Edit Form. So I click on this, move this to the side a little bit. And I can start selecting these kind of faces and edges and start moving them where I want them to go. Right, so I'm creating kind of a ridge up here, moving all of these in. Don't need that on. Moving this down. Right, and so over time, I'm just kind of selecting different parts of this form to start matching the canvas that I have in the back. And this is totally not accurate, right? I'm not really doing it the justice it would deserve if I were actually doing it, but you kind of get the point. And then there are some indentations that we can start to make as well. So what I'm going to do is select all of these and go to subdivide like this. So I have a lot more faces in the front to work with. So I can now start to select some of these and edit these forms and drop them down, right, to make little indentations. What I can also do is I can select edges like this. Maybe the edges all the way around. There's also a shortcut for selecting edges too, but I'm not really using that right now. Here we go. And we'll try to crease these. So now we've made kind of a crease on the front and the back, where on the back some handheld things would go, like where your fingers would grip, and on the front where some of these circles would go. And I'm going to finish form. So when we go out of this, I'll turn the canvas off. Creating something like this with these subtle shapes would be very, very difficult in other CAD modeling programs, but in Fusion, it's actually quite easy. If you look inside of the canvas, there's also a handle on the top. And so the handle is very easily created. We can say create a sketch, and we're just going to do I'm going to say a spline. It's going to be very unscientific here. And actually, it's a little bit off. I can try to move this a little. Obviously, I would be doing a lot more accurate thing if this were an actual design. But just this little line right here, I can say stop sketch. See, it's a little line. And I can go back into create form and create a pipe based on this. And then when I'm done with the form, I've created a pipe that goes through the top. Now, there's some other things that I need to do with this pipe to make it, but I can very, very quickly create a patch, and then stitch them all together. And obviously, I'm going through this super duper quickly, but now that I have made these two objects there, you can see that there's no line delineating there. So I can just go to modify and combine, make sure this is set to join and say OK. And now there's a little line there. These two things have been combined. And I could modify and maybe put a fillet in on this one and this one to make it a little bit nicer transition between the two. Yeah, it's a little off-centered, but I'm doing this kind of fast. So that is a combination of sketching and sculpting. One other thing that you can do that I want to make sure that I talk about is I'm going to create a sketch maybe with a spline like this. Kind of make this cool shape. Well, I can go down into the patch environment and say create an extrusion on this line, and I can actually pop up this line into 3D like that. And it's an infinitely thin body, but all I have to do is just go to create and thicken and click on this, and I can thicken this into a shape that would be very difficult to create in the modeling environment. It'd be very difficult to create in the sculpting environment, but super duper easy to create in the patching environment. And patching can be done with a lot of other things. Here's a cool example of patching. I'm looking at that kind of, I don't know what it looks like, an MB or MS or something like that. I can create just a sketch, just maybe another spline like this. Say stop sketch. And what I can do in the patching environment is I can go to the trim. Actually, I need to go back here to this body before I thicken it. I can go to modify and trim, and I can say what tool do I want to use to trim, and where do I want to trim. So I want to cut off maybe the bottom of this. You see it turns red, and I say OK. So now this looks normal from the top, but from the side, or the front, I guess, I've cut it on this line. So now when I turn on this body, and actually I need to do the cutting again. So let me delete this body. So now that I've done that cutting right there, I can go in and make this thick as I did before. And let me turn off the sketch. And I've made that same shape, but now with a super wavy bottom line. So pretty awesome. So that is the patch environment. You can do quite a bit of what's called surface modeling with the patch environment that you just can't do in the more prismatic shapes, or you couldn't do in the sculpting environment. Let me show you one very last quick example, because somebody asked a question on the little question thing here about simulation. So let me sketch something very super quickly and show you what a simulation looks like. So this is a good example of mine. I'm going to create something that goes over a door. So let's create sketch and arc here to maybe here, and then offset this. So I just create another offset right here like that. And then I'm going to close this off. So I'm going to connect those two. And I'm going to go up here to just some arbitrary length like that. So this might be some sort of door hanger type thing. So I'm going to extrude this up like this, just a little bit, and then this would go over a door and something would hang on it. So Fusion allows you to actually see how stresses in objects would work. We go down to simulation on the left here. We say new study, and we're just going to select this one, static stress, which is what would be when you're hanging something off of a door. So all of these now come online. We say material. This is set as default to steel. I'm probably not going to make this out of steel. Let's make it out of ABS plastic, which is very common. Now the constraints is where this model can't move, right? So if this is designed to fit over a door, this is constrained. You see a little lock is right there. This is on the top of the door, and this is on the front part of the door, and everything else can move. Great. So now the load asks, force, pressure, moment, remote force. We're just going to say force acts right here in the center of this, and of how many newtons. So a newton is essentially a rough way of understanding a newton is how many is the effect of gravity on one apple is about 1 newton. That's very non-scientific way to describe it. But 100 apples pulling on this would be 100 newtons. So let's just say 100 right here and say OK. So we have that set up. Now let's click on the solve button and see what happens. There you go. So you have this will bend. You see that this is deforming right here, and you can see where this is experiencing the most stress, and it's obviously right here. If we go down to loads and change this to 1,000 newtons and solve it again, like this, you can see that there's a lot of failures right here. So that's obviously an issue if you want to hold that many apples on this little door hanger. So that is a very quick thing about simulation. But again, all of this is free for personal use and for low revenue commercial use, which is really, really awesome. So let me go back here. So I hope that this has given you a good overview, and it seems like I answered the question good for the simulation. You can do quite a bit of things with Fusion 360. So this was hopefully just an overview, and hopefully soon I'm going to be coming out with the class for Fusion 360, which is going to be pretty comprehensive, going through all of the different workspaces or that you can go through, as well as having a reference section, just like I have with MeshMixer, where every single major tool has like a 2 or 3 minute video. So if you forget how it's used, or you just want to see an example of how to set it up, you'll be able to go to the reference section and see that, which is pretty nice. So there's no other questions? No, nobody has any other questions. That's fine. Then I just really want to thank you and thank for all the people that joined today and the people that watch this later on. And I hope you have a great June, and we'll be back in July with another 3D printing, 3D design webcast. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.